Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Designer Head. As I mentioned before in my previous videos, I am trying to do this more regularly. Obviously, life happens and doesn't always specifically happen on the schedule, but I am trying. I think today is 2-week mark of my last video, and I'm gonna try and continue with that kind of a trend, if you will. Now, if you're new here, welcome to Designer Head channel. This is where I talk and rant about design industry, different subjects on design, where I talk about transitioning into UX and product design. And if you're new here, then hey, subscribe and hit that bell icon so you know every time I post a new video. And today we're going to be discussing a subject that has been on my mind for a while. A lot of people ask me about it, and it seems like I haven't heard too many people talk about it publicly, if you will. There are some places where you can see certain information and data on the subject, but I want to dive into it. Today we're going to be talking about salaries. Yeah, salaries in the tech industry for specifically designers. I'm not going to talk about others, even though I might mention, but hey, who knows? But without further ado, let's hit it. All right, so salaries. Let's try and make it not too long of a video, or at least I'm going to try not to make it too long of a video. So I want to talk about salaries, something that I've been asked so many times, and probably more than I can count in the last couple of years. People, especially the ones who are transitioning from different fields into this one, people who are new to the industry, people who are about to get their first job in the industry and just got their offer, and I don't know if it's an accurate number there or not. And the list goes on, and it's a big confusion, and I get that. I don't think there is a one single place where you can find like, this is what you should be asking if you're this. For one single reason, and that is because we don't necessarily have a standardized titles, if you will, or identification of who you are as a creative. If you have X amount of years of experience, if you're entering X title, if you're about to do so-and-so job specifically, then your salary is supposed to be in the brackets of between this and that, right? It's very easy to see that in other professions, such as I don't know, lawyers, maybe doctors a little bit tricky because again, it depends on so many different things, but and lawyers, I think there's some standardization in teachers, professors, drivers, I don't know, pilots, and many other professions. There's somewhat of a standardization of salaries, versus in the tech industry, it's a bit of chaotic. It depends on so many different variables, which I want to cover today because I want to try and eliminate this confusion by probably introducing more confusion, and I'm sorry about that ahead of time, but I'm hoping it will make sense when you make decisions about how much should you ask for, or how much will you get paid if you become X, Y, and Z. So let's start from simple things. The simple things are, you're a new designer, you either just transitioned from some industry into becoming a designer, either a product designer or UX designer, or what have you, and or you're just graduated high school or college and you're on the job market hunting for your first position. Now, in either of these cases, both of you will be classified as what we call a junior designer. Doesn't matter if it's a UX, product, visual, graphic, doesn't matter. You're a junior designer. Why? Age has nothing to do with that. You're new to this industry. Another part is if you came from another industry and you spent there 5, 6, 7 years, it doesn't matter because you're still going to be called a junior. Why? Because this is your first entry into that specific field, into that specific profession. So please be aware of the fact that if you're about to leave your very cushiony 6-figure salary as, I don't know, an architect or a project manager or a, I don't know, engineer or whatnot, and become a UX designer, product designer, your salary is not going to be the same. So please keep that in mind. Now, there are many ways of calculating and understanding your pay, and it depends on several things. And I'm going to be talking about specifically the United States market. Why? Because I'm in the United States. I'm more aware of what's going on in terms of the salaries and pay here than I am outside of it. If you were to ask me the same question 7, 8, 9 years ago, I probably would have been able to answer that question. Why? Because I was traveling a lot. I was working all across different continents and different countries. And so I kind of knew a little bit what's going on and then what people are charging and people getting paid and whatnot. But today, the world moved on. I haven't been on this kind of a track of between different countries for many, many years now. I've been based mostly in the United States since 2014. And so my knowledge kind of got lost or got stuck in that past, so I don't want to touch that. So today in the United States, when you are as a designer in the tech industry, your salary will be based or evaluated on many different factors. So the first main factor that you need to understand when you're talking to different companies and trying to get a grasp of how much they're going to pay you is, where do you live? Yes, I know it technically shouldn't matter, but it does. And I think it's kind of validly does. I know some people think that, well, it shouldn't matter where I live. If I'm, doing so-and-so job, I should be getting paid as anyone else in the industry. Well, to be honest, I can see a point in that, and maybe somebody's gonna leave me some bad kind of comments down below of what I'm about to say, but not everything is about doing the exact same job and being in different location to be paying you exactly same as anyone else. Why? Because everything is essentially based on socioeconomic location, which means, or geoeconomic location. Is that the right word? I think the geoeconomic location. Don't quote me on that. Not an economist. The thing is, if you live in, let's say you live somewhere in, I don't know, Midwest in America, your living expenses are so low in comparison to the coastal ones, right? So people who live in California or New York, for instance, the East Coast versus the West Coast, the living expenses are incredibly high. And I'll give you an example. Many people dream of going and living in New York or in California. I'm not really aware of all the prices on rental and whatnot in California, but I have a bit of a kind of an idea. In New York, in comparison, for instance, a 2-bedroom apartment right now for rent. I'm not talking about buying real estate, I'm not talking about buying houses, but you're starting out, you're presumably young, or you're transitioning and you decided to move to New York. Odds are you're not going to move and right away buy something unless you have the option, which most people from the ones that I've been speaking to in the last couple of years do not have that option, or at least a lot of them don't. So you're probably going to be looking for a rental. Now, rental in New York, depending where you live, right? New York is, when people say New York, they don't necessarily talk about Manhattan Island. They're talking about all the 5 boroughs, which is New York, Manhattan, Bronx, Queens, and Staten Island. Now, all of these 5 boroughs are very different, and depending on where you live, your cost of living is going to be slightly different. If you want to live in Manhattan, the island is long, so if you live, the lower you live on that island, the more expensive it is. The higher you live, the cheaper it is. However, regardless right now where you live, probably the cheapest rent you can find for, let's say, even a 1-bedroom apartment is going to be in the vicinity of about $2,000 to $2,500. Maybe in a really shitty place, in a really shitty building, you might be paying $1,500 or maybe $1,700 or $1,800 for a one-bedroom apartment, or maybe $1,200 or $1,300 for a studio. So let's take that into account. Let's take that your average spend on your living, not eating or anything, just the rental, the housing, is going to be on average $2,000 a month. Now, plus that, you have the expense of commute. So if you don't work from home full time, like for instance myself and so many others, you will be going to the office at least 3 days or so a week. That means you need a Metro Pass, a Metro card. Either you do, to be honest, I haven't taken the subway in so many years now, I wouldn't even know what's the price, but I would assume it's still around $2.75 to $3 per one-way commute. If you're taking a Metro card, then probably it's going to be $120, $140 a month. So here's that, plus your internet, which probably going to be in the vicinity of $70 to $80, plus your utilities. Food is no cheap here. If you're going to be eating out like many people do in New York, because that's the beauty of New York, you have a shit ton of restaurants where you can choose and pick what you want to eat, then you're looking at another at least $500, well, not more, probably $700 to $1,000 a month in spending on your food. Obviously, drinks with friends, going out to the bar, getting some clothing and whatnot, you're already looking at around $5,000 a month living expenses. With your rent, with your utilities, with your food, going out periodically. Odds are you're not gonna own a car in Manhattan, because it literally makes no sense to have a car in Manhattan, because you can't even fucking park it anywhere in most places, right? So obviously, if you want to move around on the weekends quickly, it's gonna be Ubers or cabs. So all in all, the average will be anywhere between $4,000 to $5,000 a month is going to be your living expense. In comparison, for instance, to, I don't know, even if I'm going to go to Philadelphia, which is still the East Coast, but outside of the New York State and outside of New York, or a little bit deeper into, Virginia or somewhere else, my cost of living is gonna drop dramatically. From those $5,000 a month, it's probably gonna go down to maybe $3,000 or maybe $2,500, because my rental is going to be, instead of $2,000 for a one-bedroom apartment, probably going to be $1,000 or $1,200. My utility is gonna be probably a little bit lower. The expense of transportation might be a little bit lower, and so on and so forth. So when companies are looking at you, right, and they're trying to evaluate what's the money number they should be putting on your offer letter, they're also evaluating where do you live. So if you're living somewhere that your living expense is low, then they have no need or no incentive to give you higher, because you're covering your living expenses, and you're probably going to be making a little bit extra, if anything, right? So when people are looking at them, as always distracted by my watch, when people are considering asking for a specific number, you also need to take this in consideration. And again, I'm not saying it's fair, I'm not saying it's unfair, I'm saying this is the way the practice is, and I think on some level it makes sense, because if a company pays all of their employees the exact same amount, regardless where they live, let's say you have 5 designers, they're all equally with the same amount of experience, equally the same amount expertise. If they all lived, let's say, in New York State, they would all be making, I don't know, let's say $100,000 a year. But if you take away the people who don't live in New York, then the question is, if they're still making $100,000 a year, that means their standard of living, meaning whatever they can afford and do in other places, is way higher than the ones who do not, right? And so those who do not, because they live in New York or California or whatnot, they're going to be seeing their peers living the best life they can live elsewhere, while working at the same company, having the same kind of a job title and the same expertise and experience, they're gonna be like, hold on a second. I have to go to the company and say, hey, pay me more because I want to live the same way as these people do. It's not typically crosses their mind of, hey, I'm gonna move to that place so I can live the same way as these people do. Oftentimes, it's people asking for more money, and if that person asks for more money, then the other person is like, hold on a second, now they're getting 120 and I'm still getting 100. Hey, we're at equal level of expertise and experience. I want 122. And this is a never-ending cycle to the point where a company eventually just can't afford to pay you, right? You have to understand that companies, as much as they are built to as much as we want them to respect us, as much as we want them to value all of their employees and whatnot, at the end of the day, it's still a business, and they need to make a profit. And if they don't make a profit, they go out of business, you lose your job. It's very simple, really. Now, let's talk about what does total compensation mean? Because oftentimes people get really hung up on the numbers on their offer letters. And that number sometimes actually doesn't mean much, right? Let's say you got an offer for $100,000, right? You're not a junior, you're mid-level, I don't know, you've been in the industry for a few years, you have a bit of experience, so 100K is right number for you, especially if you live, East Coast, West Coast, and whatnot. And then you're like, hold on a second. I know designers making $250,000. But do they really? Because at the end of the day, many do not. So when companies give you an offer and you're looking at this number, what I want you to also evaluate and understand and think about is, what else do you get outside of that number? Those could be things that you don't necessarily put an actual monetary value on, such as if you are applying to a company and they give you an offer for $100,000, but you're fully remote, you never have to go to the office, ever. Maybe once in half a year you have to fly in or whatnot into the company retreat or whatnot that the company will pay you for. It doesn't come out of your pocket, right? That means that you have zero expenses on daily commute to the office and back. Zero. Versus somebody else who's getting the same offer for, let's say, $120,000 or $110,000 a year, and they have to go to the office 5 days a week. That is adding an extra commute time. More so, what it also adds, and some people don't think about, is eating out. Because if you're going to the office, most people, at least from anyone and everyone that I've known thus far in this industry, I have met, apart from myself, maybe a handful of people that actually bring their own lunch to the office, which I did most of my time before I started working from home. I like my own food, I cook my own food, and so I bring my own lunch. However, people that typically commute to offices, they eat out. They order into the office, they go out for lunches and whatnot. That's an extra cost that typically companies don't cover unless you work for Google or Netflix or whatnot, that they have on location kitchens and whatnot that they will cover your meals. But in most cases, you will not. In most cases, it's coming out of your pocket. So if you're working from home, you don't have that specific expense. Yes, you're still eating food that you're buying, but the difference is eating at a restaurant every single day for lunch and eating at your house every single day for lunch, the amount monthly is going to be very different, unless you just basically order in from cool and nice and fancy restaurants every day for lunch. That's your prerogative. But in reality, the comparison is, what are the expenses outside of your regular regular salary, right? Similarly to when you're working from home. you don't have, or you don't incur the same expenses. So the salary could be a little bit skewed differently based on the requirements of the company. Another thing that you need to take into consideration is healthcare. In the United States, we all require, or we all need healthcare. So if you're getting paid $100,000, but your company covers your full healthcare, like literally you don't pay a dime unless you actually go to the doctor, but you don't pay anything monthly. Versus somebody who's getting $110,000 or even $120,000 and their company do not pay fully their healthcare and only pays part of it, which means that person also have to pay anywhere between, I don't know, $150, $200, $250, sometimes even $500 a month healthcare. An extra cost. So when you're actually sitting down and you're breaking down your kind of offer letter number, what they're giving you on that offer letter, then try to also calculate every single thing that they also offer you. Do they cover fully your healthcare? Do they provide you with some sort of a work from home stipend? Is it a fully work from home company? Do they also offer some other benefits? Do they also offer you stock options in the company, because stock options can be translated into an actual money eventually? Do they offer you bonuses? Do they and the list goes on. Across all these benefits, if you're seeing that your actual hardcore cash is $100,000, and then in addition of everything, all the expenses that you're going to be saving in the year, plus the bonuses or stock options, you might find yourself being in a situation that your actual total compensation is not 100, it's 150 or even 160 sometimes. So that's how you really need to be thinking about your salary, not just the actual hardcore cash that they're gonna put in your bank account every month after taxes and stuff. So yeah, think about that. Also, be considerate of the fact that because of where you live, some states in the United States do not have income tax, which means if I am in New York getting a salary, let's say twice as you do, for instance, but your state does not have income tax, that means you're actually making hardcore cash more than I do. Why? Because I also have another tax portion that I'm responsible for that has been taken out of my paycheck. So when you see a number of $150,000, it doesn't mean a person actually gets $150,000. Because depending on where they live, they might actually be getting half of it. Maybe a little more. 150, depending on where you live, can be actual money after taxes and everything else. Maybe 90-ish. Maybe 100. Depends on the state, depends on where you live. Like if you live in New York City, many people don't know that there is also a local tax. So if you're living inside of the 5 boroughs, you're paying your federal income tax, you're paying your state income tax, and you're paying your local tax, which is 3 layers of taxations that you're paying in New York City when you're living in the 5 boroughs, right? Now, if you move out of the 5 boroughs but still remain in New York State, then you're paying only 2 levels of taxes, which is the federal and state, right? If you move out to a state that does not have income tax, then you pay only 1 income tax layer, which is only the federal one. So when you're thinking and calculating your salaries and what you're getting as a salary, what you're asking for and whatnot on your offer letters, always try to consider and think about not only the actual number of what you're getting as a hardcore cash on your offer letter, but also try to think about all the benefits, where you live, what kind of taxes you're going to be paying. What is the end result of your salary? Not only just the number you see before taxes, before benefits, and everything else. Now, As we've covered how to look at salaries and how to evaluate them and understand them, I want to dive into some of the numbers, right? Now, one of the things that I see a lot, people come to me and ask me a lot, is what is the actual salary of a UX designer or a product designer? And I always try to say that it depends, right? It depends on many things, but national average, and again, you can Google it, and I truly hope you do. There is a shit ton of websites that pull this data across their information and their internal data, such as Glassdoor, and there is another one called Zippia, and there is a shit ton of them. There is a salary.com that I think pulls the same kind of a data in there. Let's see. Yep. So the national average right now for junior designers, UX, product, and whatnot, is anywhere between $60,000 and $70,000. Now, this between depends on the companies. If the company is big or not, if the company can afford you or not, do they offer any other benefits or not, and the list goes on. But the national average is between $60,000 and $70,000. Currently, it stands on median around 68,800, as I can see on some of the data, and that is for New York State, if you will. This is not even a national average. This is a state average. So the national average right now is anywhere between 60 to 70, depending on the state, depending on the company, depending on what the company also offers and so forth. It can be anywhere between 60 to 70. So please keep that in mind. Now, I don't want to make this video an hour long because this is a subject we can definitely talk about for an hour. But I do want you to take this with you, and I hope I'm going to leave you with this that you're going to actually use. Salary is not always the main event. When you're considering working for a company and you're considering working for a specific industry, try to also think about what are you gaining from that company, what are you gaining from that experience, and so forth. Money is very important. We live in a capitalistic society. We have to earn money, period. But the difference between making, even at the junior level, between 60 and 70 is not that huge to be not taking a job because they didn't give you 70 while you wanted 70, but they gave you 62, right? Or 63. You will get to that 70 probably within a year or year and a half, or maybe max 2, or even more than that. But don't get too hung up on that specific number. Try to calculate everything that goes into it. Your benefits, your location, commuting or not, what else the company offers you, culture, growth opportunities, learning opportunities, and the list goes on. There's so many things that the company can offer you, not just the actual money. So please think about it, and please take that with you. Anyway, I hope this video was helpful. I truly hope that everything that I share with the world and with you specifically is helpful and beneficial and educational. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, you don't disagree with me, please comments down below. Like, subscribe, hit that bell icon so you know every time I release a new video. Share this video with anyone you think they must or should listen to this subject or this video specifically. And once again, I thank you for your time. I cannot thank enough for anyone who comes to my channel, watches my videos, and spends their time listening to what I have to say. Thank you. And never stop learning.